Webster from Arts Rutherglen, and we are co-hosting with Indigo Libraries our wonderful author, Jenn J McLeod. This morning we're going to do something a little bit different. Jenn said she was sick of her own voice, so we thought we would have a conversation. Thank you to Glenview for the scones, which you have to hang out for until the end of this session.
Right? You can't go. No.
And you can't have coffee either.
I can't walk out. Oh, gee, that's all we came for. Together in a picture, I've always loved the idea of the changing seasons. So that I wanted to, and I also, as a writer, when I came to write this first book, House for All Seasons, it's actually a story about 4 women who go home to a small town to claim an old house that's left to them, and they have to go and stay a season each. So I wrote it in 4 parts. And as a writer, I wanted to challenge myself to write 4 female characters in the one book, each as different as the seasons. So that started my seasons journey, and then I decided there are 4 seasons, so I would write 4 books in the seasons collection. And that's what I've done, but they are all standalone stories, so they're individual stories to be written.
And you've created some wonderful towns like Watercolour Bay from out of Coffs Harbour. The other town that I really liked was Callangarry Crossing,
yes,
which was an outback town. Can you tell us why you prefer writing about the country rather than the city, because the city was your first base?
Well, again, I think I'm a country girl at heart. I travelled around Australia in a Ford F100 and a tent when I was 23, 24. And I knew I would do it again, and we are doing it again now. But the other wonderful thing about small towns is, you know, fiction is all about characters and conflict. And you don't get better conflict than in a small town. You know, everybody knows everybody. You know, if you want to keep a secret, too bad. You know.
There are a lot of topics in your books that I particularly enjoyed. The first one that I read, The Season of Shadow and Light, has a lot of horses. A lovely story about horses. The second one that I read, which was The Other Side of the Season, had a lot of story about art and artists and shadow and light and how artists work. The other aspect that I loved from both books was the healing power of food, and I noticed that it was the men who were doing the cooking and being the chefs. That was pretty good.
You know, I am so
that
fascinated.
Was from 2.
I'm fascinated when I talk to a reader and they pick up things that I didn't actually consciously do.
Right.
But that's really interesting. Yep.
And then the farming, so I'm wondering whether that has come back from your father's background. So can you talk to us? Are these personal interests, or have you picked these up and been inspired by these topics as you have travelled around extensively?
When we did the first sea change from the city, gave up our city jobs, we decided to buy a cafe, a small town cafe. So that's what we did in Sawtell. We bought a cafe. Figured in the corporate world I had drunk a lot of coffee, how hard could it be to make one? So we bought a cafe. Did that for 4 years, nearly killed us. Hardest job I have ever done in my entire life. Physically, absolutely daunting. I have so much respect for people who work in hospitality and people who run small businesses, especially in small towns. So I do have a love of food. I've always loved food, but the cafe obviously taught me an awful lot. And it wasn't until recently somebody pointed out that I have food in every single one of my books. Even the next book that's coming out next year, there's a cook who goes to get a job at a country bed and breakfast. So I seem to have a thing for food, proudly. The other thing, the art theme came, well, this one that you mentioned, The Other Side of the Season, it does have an artist in it, and it talks about everything has a reflection. I was actually sitting doing a book signing, And I was looking at an art book because I was going to write this story, and there was somebody wrote, everything has a reflection. I can't remember now, everything, if it leans to the left in real life, it leans to the left in reflection. And I thought, that's just gorgeous. Everything has a reflection, just like there's another side to every story. And that became my tagline. So that happened from just skimming through an art book in a bookshop while I was sitting there doing a signing.
But you must have researched the art and artists, because that came across as quite detailed and knowledgeable, and your history of artists, especially women artists in Australia.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Did research that, but I also did art in school. So I'd like to think I have a creative streak in the visual arts, but I don't. I tried. I did a hippopotamus out of ceramic, and I still remember, I think I was 13 and my auntie laughed at me, and I've never forgotten she laughed at my hippopotamus because she was a very good artist. I come from a really creative family. She's a very good artist. And my dad's a very good musician, but I ended up with a keyboard writer. I mean, I always thought research was the realm of historical writers. They had to get their research historically correct. But contemporary, boy oh boy, if I leave something in there that's not quite right, a reader will tell me. I mean, if I put my Holden HQ in a story that's set in 1969, they'll tell me there was no Holden HQ in 1969. so yes, research, no matter what you're writing, is important. But you know what I love, what fell into place? Pro heart.
Yes.
That thread just, sometimes you as a writer, I write the story, I'm a pantster, I just write. And then I'll do the research and I'll start filling in the gaps. And when I found that, it was like gold, just fell into my lap. And I went, what a beautiful connection.
Yes.
Wanting to be the next Pro Heart. So I didn't know about Pro Heart, so there you go, I learned.
In these two books, there are family conflicts. And these family conflicts stem from secrets that have been kept in the past. Natalie and Sid, and Paige and Alice. As a theme, do you believe that truth will always come out? And you've mentioned fate, that truth will come out because of things that are fated to happen. Do you believe in fate always out? Because there are dark secrets, things that have been kept, and you develop those through your narrative.
That is, secrets are the premise of my stories. In this one, it was touted at the end in the reviews as the twist you never saw coming. The next book that comes out in April is about secrets and lies. And to answer your question about truth is, whilst yes, often it is better out, in this fifth book I explore the hurt that can, that you have to sometimes make a decision and weigh up the hurt that will occur if the truth comes out. So that's where my character in the fifth book is placed. Does she tell and hurt an awful lot of people? Does she keep the truth? Because I think there is a point of no return in telling the truth. You have a moment of opportunity, and I actually talk about this in the fifth book. You tell a lie, and there's a moment that you have in order to turn that around and tell the truth. Once you pass the point of no return though, you know, you've told a lie to too many people, too many times, you get to the point where you go, I can't possibly tell the truth now. And so you just continue on living that lie. And I do love that whole concept of, you know, when you do tell a lie, how do you then turn around and tell the truth? And what happens when you don't? I love that.
Yes. One of the books, there is a good resolution. In the other one, there is good and there's also some sadness. I won't be a plot destroyer, but so it'd be interesting to see if someone doesn't tell the truth, because in these, truth has been told and has had good consequences. But as I say,
in Season of Shadow and Light, my third book, I actually wrote 2 endings. I wrote, you know, you used to get the DVDs, you had an alternate ending. If you didn't like the way the movie ended, you could replay the second ending. So I did 2 endings, and I thought I'll just give it to my publisher and let them decide which ending they want, happy or sad. And the publisher said, no, Jen, it doesn't work that way. You're the author, you actually have to write the book. So I had to make a decision. So I did. I won't tell you which way I went, but yes, it was an interesting experience.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you come up with people with characters' names? Because there's a really quirky one in Season of Shadow and Light called Paige Turner.
Yes. I actually didn't think Paige Turner. I didn't think I'd get away with it. I thought my editor would say, "No way, Jen, can you have anything?" They hate cliches in the publishing business. I think I got away with it because in the tagline or in the blurb, the book blurb, I mentioned that Paige Turner's life is anything but a Paige Turner. So it was very much the basis of her background. So that's how I managed to get away with it. But I love coming up with names. I love meeting people with interesting names. I love Beryl. I think Beryl's a very pretty name.
So watch out.
So watch out, yeah. And as I say, I love coming up with animal names too. I have Karma in the book, and I have Shrapnel, who's an old Vietnam vet. Shrapnel, because he belongs to an old Vietnam vet, and he's a pain in the ass. So I call him Shrapnel. So I do, as an author, you do get, the fun part is making names. And now travelling in the caravan, I mean, I have characters pull into me in the next site, like you wouldn't believe. So I have no end of inspiration for characters at the moment.
Excuse me. Why do you frequently write about mother-daughter relationships?
Yes, why do I? That's actually only dawned on me sort of recently, and I think it stems back, to be honest, it stems back to my own relationship with my mum. I loved her dearly, but you know, we were a typical mother and daughter, and I think, you know, they say write what you know, and I think I can draw a lot of emotions from that. The sad thing was, well, it was good and bad. My mum got very sick towards the end of me writing this book, and she didn't quite make the book launch of this book. She did make. I got my books about 2 weeks before the launch, and I took it straight up to the nursing home where she was, and I gave it to her. My mum used to read Mills and Boons, the little pink Mills and Boons. The first thing my mum did was she opened the book up, and I gave it to her. I put it on her lap, and she goes, "Oh, it's heavy, isn't it?"
In some of your books you also write chapters from a male perspective.
Yes.
So how do you change language because most of your protagonists are female, how do you change from male to the female to the male voice?
This one, I particularly love the male point of view in this one. It is something you have to really think about, otherwise they do come across as a bit feminine in some of the things they say. So it is something that I have to concentrate on a lot. Usually I'll have some sort of image in front of me. I might pick an actor, you know, it never hurts to have Ryan Gosling on your computer screen while you're writing. Cary Grant, sorry. So, you know, it's nice to, it's challenging, but it's nice as a writer to be able to challenge myself to do something a little bit different. I mean, each one of my books is structured differently. So, and I've done that on purpose to keep myself interested, because I think if a writer is writing the same sort of book all the time, they have to get bored. And that has to show in their writing. So I set myself a challenge. So this one is set in 4 parts. It's 4 women and 4 stories, and it's topped and tailed. This one is what somebody describes as a slow burn, which is exactly what I wanted, because it's called Simmering Season, and it is about Maggie's perfect storm of a school reunion and somebody who comes back and some other issues that she has in her life. And it is a slow build, almost like a slow build to a storm. Season of Shadow and Light was my first male point of view, and it was alternate chapters, so he got his say in every 3rd chapter or thereabouts. And this one, my 4th book, was my first dual time period story. So, in other words, there's 30 years difference in the story here, so they start out as teenagers, and then there's the modern day thread where it's 30 years later. And that has been a really big challenge to do that. I didn't realise how big a challenge dual time periods were.
Which is what's more important to you, characterisation or plot, or a combination of both?
But the sort of writing that I do, which is commercial women's fiction, it's character. Because what I'm providing a reader as an author is a journey that you take with that character emotionally. What you want to see as a reader when you're reading, whether you realise it or not, is you want to see a character who starts out one way and grows to be better, wiser, stronger, happier. Sometimes it's not good, sometimes they end up sadder, but they have taken this journey emotionally, and you as the reader are taking that as well.
Well, which leads me to what is your...
Question
yes.
on that. I've heard authors say that when they start out writing, they don't know how it's going to finish because the character is going to dictate to them what is going to happen. Is that...
Can I answer? Thank you so much for asking that question, because I have a little story that I tell when I was learning to write. I joined a writers' organisation. So anyway, I was at a conference and there were some very well-to-do, very famous female authors there who, anyway, these ladies were standing around looking all very posh and wonderful, because that's what I thought authors were when I was starting out, all posh and wonderful. So they're standing around saying, and one of them said, "Oh my lord," she said, "my character, I had her going one way and all of a sudden she just ran off with the story." And I thought to myself, what a load of rubbish. A character does not run away with the story. But in actual fact, this is Season of Shadow and Light, and it is a story about Paige Turner. It started out to be Paige's story. She was a mother who, postpartum stroke, lost her sense of smell and taste. She was a food reviewer, so not much good being a food reviewer if you've lost your sense of smell or taste. The other character in this book is Aidan, and he was a city chef. He had a dream to buy his own business and he was on his way to doing that when his girlfriend swindled him, took away all his money. So he had no choice but to go back home to Coolabah Gully, to his uncle's pub where he now is the executive chip fryer. So he's pretty cranky. She's not doing too well, and it was going to be their story basically. And what happened was, I gave Paige a daughter, a 6-year-old daughter called Matilda. But I was at a literary dinner one night listening to Gabrielle Lord, an author, talking. So anyway, she said, "I have some advice for you, all you authors." Now I had written this, it was in manuscript, totally completed. "I have advice for all you new authors out there. Never write children who are of a dependent age into your novels, because you have to account for them. Otherwise your readers will write to you and say, you are an irresponsible mother, where was the child while you were..." And so I've gone, oh Lord, I've just written this 6-year-old into this book where Paige and Aidan are going to, you know, obviously get friendly. What do I do with a 6-year-old? So what do? I create a nana. So I created Alice, and I put Alice in this story. This is a very long-winded way of saying to you, I had already written the story when I wrote Alice in as the nana. Anyone who reads this book will say to me, there is no way in the world Alice did not exist in the draft, because it is Alice's story in the end. She totally ran away with the story, and I had no idea until it happened.
So do you have a favourite character?
Oh no, don't ask me to pick. That's like,
No.
do you have a favourite child?
Impossible?
No. No. Yes, another question. Yes.
You said one was around horses.
Yes. There's a very strong theme about the healing property of horses. Strong theme. It's not a story about horses by any means, but there is a horse that has great significance to the characters in the story, and over a number of years. So it's quite an old
You were right.
No, but where we lived, there was a horse. We called him Ed. His name.
Not Mr. Ed, was it?
Ed. We actually found out later he was a racehorse, a retired racehorse, quite a good one. His name was Navarre, which is heaven backwards, and you'll see that. I've done a little tribute to Ed in here, and he was a very nippy horse. He would come up for company, I guess, but he would nip. So over a period of time that we lived there, we would go around with carrots and bread and stuff on our morning walk every morning, and we got to the point where we could actually feed him. So, and I did a lot of research then about horses because I knew I was scared of them because I had a bad experience with a horse when I was young. So I was scared of them, and I knew that if I was scared of the horse would pick up on that. I learnt that. So that's where I got my interest in horses and how they read humans and what they can do for humans in return.
Is writing energising? I think just your whole demeanour says it is.
There are phases. There are some magic moments in writing. When I first start a book, it's energising because I'm getting to just write a whole lot of characters. And I am a pantster, so it's writing by the seat of my pants. I have no idea. I usually start with a title, some character names, and some idea of how it's going to open, some idea of how it's going to end, but that can change. And I just start putting stuff down on paper. I can get to 50,000 words, and I have a skeleton story. So I have a beginning, a middle, and an end of about 50,000 words. I then go back, and that's when it starts getting a little bit tricky because I'm just reading it over and over again, and I add layers. So the next layer will be sort of in things in relation to the character traits and personalities. I'll start putting that in. And then I might read again, and I'll start concentrating on the setting. So I build the book up. So I end up going from 50,000 words up to 120 or something, just by simply layering. And then what happens is an editor comes along. And with this, what happened with this one, wonderful editor, absolutely amazing. And she said, I've been told by the publisher that you like to up straight, call a spade, just you're a very good author to work with. So I'm just going to get covered right off at the bat. I've cut up 20,000 words from your manuscript. And I went, what? Which put me under count because I'm contracted to write 120,000 words. So it took me down to 98,000 words, and I went, wow. And that's what a good editor will do. She will point out where, it was all my choice. I could have said, no way, lady, and kept it all, but I've never ever disagreed with my editor.
Well, I have a question about that. Do editors tell you about your books? What to keep, what to leave out?
Yep, there's 3 phases. So I'll tell you about my editing process right now with my 5th book because I'm very excited. It's being picked up by a UK publisher. And the editor who I'm working with, the lady who's actually picked up the story, I sent it to her and she got very excited. Her name's Rosie DeCourcy. She was Maeve Binchy's editor for 23 years. And she also, back in 1985, was sitting on the lounge room floor going through a yet to be published manuscript called The Thornbirds. So I'm working with Rosie on my next book, and I tell you, she is just amazing. So the first thing I did was I sent my book to her as I had written it, and she comes back with what's called a structural report or a structural comment or what have you, and she basically looks at the big picture of the story. And what she did with my book is, so she made me bring it into a linear story because it is set over a 30-year period. I started with current day, and then we had another section that went back to the past. She went, no, let's just give it to the reader in the way it happened. So that was a very big structural rewrite for me. So that was the first one. I've now sent my book in for what's called copy edits. Copy edits is when an editor goes through it and looks for things like his eyes change colours, the character's eyes change colour, or even more in-depth things like why is your character feeling this at the moment? I don't understand. Why has the character said that? And what can happen is, in my head, in my writer's head, I know exactly what the character means or what he's doing or what's going on because I see this sort of movie in my head. But I haven't, obviously, as a writer, managed to put that down on paper. So she is saying to me, as a reader, you've got to tell me more. What is he doing right now? What is he feeling right now? Why has he said that? So she will get me to delve into the character at that point. That's when I built up from 98,000 words up to 120,000 again, because I was able to go in and, you know, see where I needed to build things up. She'll also say, I think you've overdone it. You're telling us this, you're preaching to us, you've told us this already, blah, blah, blah. Take that out. I can reject whatever I like.
All right.
But as I say, to me, an editor, an editor is a person who wants to make my book better. I don't know why I would disagree with any of that, especially when I'm working with somebody like Rosie.
Yes.
He's done it a few times. It's easy if luck is on your side, if time is on your side, if you've studied your craft well enough, or if you're just one of those miraculous writers who can write first time and get published, and I guess they exist in the world. For me, I wrote my first draft when I was 36 of a book that will never see the light of day. I sent it off to 46 publishers in America, because I thought that's what I had to do, become a famous author, to write, send a book, send it in America and send it to America. I got 46 rejections. So I put it aside and went back to corporate world. It wasn't until we did our sea change that I was able to pull that story, to pull that story out and look at it, and I thought to myself, no, I'm going to start again. Rural fiction was really big at the time I was starting to write, so the authors like Fleur MacDonald and Fiona Palmer, Rachel Treasure were writing these stories set in rural Australia, and I was loving them. I think it was obviously that country part of my soul. And I thought, well, I'd love to write. I want to write Australian story, but I didn't know one end of a cow to the other, or one end of a wheat header to the other. So how could I write a country story? And we had just done our sea change, and I had just had that experience where I walked down the street and strangers had said hello to me, and we've got this cafe. We had no idea what we were doing, and people were just so wonderful and accepting and lovely, and I thought that's what I want to write about. I can write about being a city person who comes back to a small town,
Yes.
and that's how I started doing it. And someone had a question up.
Just back to the editing process.
Yes.
It seemed quite drawn out. How long would it take you to start a book to have it?
Yeah. Well, the publishing process for a book is basically 12 months. That might mean, it took me 10 years to write this book. And then all of a sudden, you have 12 months to give them the next book. It's actually a thing they call in the business called second book syndrome, because so many authors think they'll never get published. We just put everything about us goes into our first book, although you won't really find me in it anymore. I stripped me out. But, we put everything into our first book, and then it's accepted, and there's all this frenzy and fluff and carry on, and I'm excited. And all of a sudden the publisher says, can we have a second one, please? And you've got to come up with another one. And it is, yeah. And a lot of authors don't manage to do that, and it is called second book syndrome. They put so much into their first book, they don't have anything left. So I joke about I ran out of friends and family to fictionalise, so I had to hit the road and find some new characters. But really it was just our desire to get back on the road. We had a property, we had a bed and breakfast, and it was a lot of work physically. When I got published, I didn't do very much of that work. I basically sat on my tush, writing all the time. So really it was a decision to start doing something while we were still physically capable of doing it. So how long we'll do it for, don't know. How long we'll last, what we'll do at the end of it, don't know. We're just taking it day by day.
Yes, because those of you, Jen travels around in a caravan.
Life is, it's Myrtle the turtle, we call her. And
Any other questions?
yeah.
Who decides the space between the lines, the size of the print, and the cover?
I guess the print. Who decides the print size? It's probably an industry standard. There are large prints. Some books get put into large print. A couple of mine are in large print. Yes. In the library system. Yes. In terms of cover. I've been very fortunate. I've been consulted with all my covers and names. I've done all my names, all my taglines, all my blurbs. So
Yes.
the publishers retained all that, which is nice. But whilst they give you, I don't like to. I can put an idea forward, but really, publishers know what's happening in the business, and they're sort of looking ahead. They're almost predicting what the styles and trends will be for when the book comes out, because there is a rather large lead time. In that question about how long does it take to get a book, part of that is there is a lead time. So a book will actually only take 9 months to produce, because they send out about 3 months in advance at what they call an advanced reader copy, and they send it to the places like media, like the Women's Weekly Book Reviewer and bookstores and things, because they need time to read in order to make comment and review when a book is actually coming out. So the book is actually made much sooner than the 12 months that it takes to come out onto the shelf.
Like these reviews
Yes.
that are in the start of the book, do they come from the publisher, or do you actively go out
They just come as a result of the publisher
Publishers.
sending comment.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I was just wondering, are you going to write any more books, or have you?
I have got so many books. I've got so many ideas. Yeah, so many ideas. In fact, after this one, after next year, it's called. I can give you a title. We agreed on a title last night, so I can finally announce the title of my new book next year will be called A Place to Remember. And it's actually set in Rockhampton on a fifth generation Brahmin cattle property. We were fortunate enough, we met them on the road, these people. They said, there's plenty of room, come and stay, park your van in our paddock. We did. It was supposed to be a short stay. Stayed for 3 months, and I had a book already written, and I had it set in Noosa, because Noosa is just so pretty and trendy and green and lush and lovely. Well, I went to this property, this Brahmin cattle property, and Mount Headlow area, which is between Yeppoon and Rockhampton in Queensland, there is this area of trachyte plugs, volcanic plugs that have eroded over the years, and this very strange landscape. And it was at the time we were there, it was very brown and brittle and harsh looking, and there was some beauty in that to me, more beautiful to me than Noosa, which was a bit cliche.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, which is the other reason why I set this story. This story is a beach story, and I set it in winter, and people thought I was quite strange for setting a beach story in winter, but I think there's just something lovely about a beach story. And so what I did was I had a Coffs Harbour banana plantation and Nambucca Valley, Nambucca Headland, which is a beach that's just south of Coffs Harbour, and I dragged the two of them together and I created Watercolour Cove. And it's because it's an artistic theme in there as well. So I can do that sort of thing as an author. But so the Rockhampton story, which comes out next year, was actually as a result of me being there and actually getting a sense of this amazing landscape. And again, it's a generational story spanning 30 years, and it's called A Place to Remember.
Any more questions?
Mine's just a little bit away from you. We've had quite a lot of authors over the years coming in, all different. One of them way back was Leanne Moriarty, and as a group of 3 women.
Leanne and Diane and Bert Carroll,
and came in as very young women. I'm not sure how many years ago.
Maybe about
5 or 6
years ago.
And then all of a sudden she's selling all through Australia.
Yes.
And why?
Yes. Okay, the question is, I'm going to say this because I know Diane Blacklock.
Right.
In fact, Diane Blacklock is one of those quotes in the front of my book. I love Diane's work. So they're gorgeous, the 3 of them, and they do a lot of touring together. Leanne's books are amazing, but she actually had written several books before. I think that was her 5th book. The Husband's Secret was the 5th book, and that really hit the mark. And she's gone on from there. So, some people think it's an overnight success. She slogged away for a lot of years on earlier stories, and then of course came Big Little Lies, which was her huge thing. I call it winning the literary lottery, because it simply is. She's talented and it's wonderful that it's happened, but she just happened to be, I think I mentioned before, it's about opportunity and time. and having the right thing. And she had the right book at the right time and the right people saw it, and off she went. It could happen to anybody at any stage of their career. It's happened with first books. There's an author called Jane Harper who last year put out a book called The Dry.
Yes.
And it is a remarkable story, fantastic writing. It was her first book. She's been optioned for TV, so that's her first book. So, you know, again, you just have to have put out the right thing at the right time and have the right person see it.
Any more questions? All I just want to say is thank you to Jen. She was just delightful from the moment on the phone yesterday. So, hey girls, we might see ourselves in a book in a couple of years' time, maybe the wine region.
Exactly.
Well,
we plotted a book actually. We plotted a book. We went out to Lake Moodamere and met the sons who run the place.
Yes.
I took my photo with them. There's some inspiration in there.
So, thank you all for coming. We've had a little laugh.
Thank you.